Fort Henry was built in 1812. The fort was originally built with the intent of keeping Americans out, but now it's a museum where all nationalities are welcome, including ghost hunters. Fort Henry is a National Historic Site and is located in Kingston, Ontario. The fort and the point on which the fort was built were named after Henry Hamilton, former Lieutenant Governor of the province of Quebec. The fort was constructed during the War of 1812 to protect the Kingston Royal Naval Dockyard, the site of the present-day Royal Military College of Canada, from possible American attacks during the war and to monitor maritime traffic on the St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario. At the beginning of the War of 1812, local militia erected a blockhouse and battery on Point Henry to defend the important naval base. On November 10, 1812, this battery was involved in repelling several American warships that were attacking the Provincial Marine Royal George as the ship was taking refuge in Kingston Harbor. This naval action strengthened the view of the stronger fortification that was needed, and so the militia and regular army began building batteries and barricades in 1813. The fort was one of several defensive structures built in and around Kingston during the war. Distrust between the Americans and the British continued after War of 1812. This led to the original fort being demolished to make way for a more extensive fort, which was constructed between 1832 and 1836. At the time, these fortifications were the strongest defense in Canada. Neither the original nor the second Fort Henry was ever attacked. Fort Henry temporarily held prisoners of the 1837 rebellions. During the Second World War, the fort served as a prisoner of war camp for German personnel. In the 1930s, under the leadership of Ronald L. Way, restoration took place as part of a government work program during the Great Depression. Fort Henry became a living museum with the introduction of the Fort Henry Guard that was opened in August 1, 1938. Ronald Way, Canada's top restorer of historical sites, brought Fort Henry to life. Ronald was born in Kingston in 1908. His father taught engineering at Queen's University. As a child, Ronald read a lot and played in the ruins of Fort Henry. He studied pre-science for a year, but fell in love with history and graduated in 1935 with a Bachelor of Arts in Canadian History. He had intended to continue his education, but when the government decided to restore Fort Henry and required qualified researchers, Ronald was recommended because of his intense military fortifications. Hired by the Ontario government in 1936, he was responsible for the actual work and the research and imagination behind it. When the restoration began, Fort Henry was little more than a pile of rubble after years of neglect. For 2 years, 1,000 laborers toiled to officially open in 1938. Uniformed military interpreters known as the Fort Henry Guard staff the fort and conduct demonstrations of British military life and tours for visitors. Self-guided tours are also available. Other activities and demonstrations include historical reenactments of drills and battle tactics, the Garrison Parade, the Victorian Schoolroom, and the Musker Parade. Did you know that Fort Henry also has a mascot? His name is David. St. David's Society of Toronto presented Fort Henry with the first mascot, David I, to commemorate the services of the Royal Welsh Fusiliers in garrison at Fort Henry from July 12, 1842 to September 20, 1843. Today, you can meet David X during regular hours or World Heritage Sunset ceremonies. Over the years, a few ghost stories have been told from the site, such as the story of an artillery brigadier who blew himself up when he hastily tried to reload a battery with gunpowder while the barrel was still hot. He still walks the battlements of the fort, dubbed the Wandering Ghost. He's only appeared at a distance, making any identification as to his identity impossible. There's also a hanging ghost. The spirit thrashes violently as the sound of distant screaming echoes across the stone walls. There's a bearded soldier who stands motionless in the midst of a crowd of people, his jacket torn and covered with blood. Another popular story features a ghost named Niels von Schultz, who was a member of the Hunters Lodge, an American group that believed Canada was ripe for revolution during the 1830s when the present Fort Henry was built. Along with 200 soldiers, he staged a revolt at the fort and was defeated by local military. On December 8, 1838, von Schultz was hanged at Fort Henry. Despite the efforts of his lawyer, Sir John A. Macdonald, Fort Henry is encircled by a ditch 40 feet wide and 30 feet deep. Numerous soldiers drunkenly met their end there. One such poor soul was John Gunner Smith, who was killed after his rifle misfired. Numerous people have said they've seen him laying in a ditch, screaming for help as he slowly bled to death. Over the years, the parade square in the lower portion of Fort Henry has been the site of some unusual events, including flickering lights and noises so loud they can be heard from outside the fort. One night, a security guard had just finished patrolling the grounds when he heard the sound of smashing glass. Fearing vandals, he radioed his partner for backup. The two stood in darkness, listening to the sounds of men running, screaming, and shouting, but no one was to be seen. They called the police and searched the entire fort, finding no one. The police officers taunted the guards, suggesting they might be spending too much time alone in the dark at the fort. As soon as the police left, the sounds continued, and the guards begged for the officers to return. For the second time that evening, 4 men searched the fort and didn't find a source of the noise. Just as the police were about to leave, they heard glass smashing about 20 feet from where they stood. The officers drew their weapons, called for backup, and decided to search the fort yet for a third time, and again, finding nothing. Spooked by the experience, the guards took the police officers' advice and went on stress leave. Doors have been seen shutting on their own, dishes moving in the kitchen with no one around, and at night, after the Union Jack is lowered, the Fort Henry Guard departs and darkness falls. You can always drive by to see what you can hear from the parking lot, if you dare.